Welcome to the I Need Coffee and Better Ideas podcast, where we caffeinate your brain with the freshest takes in news media.
We are in an accelerated disruption caused by this AI revolution. And what you now see is that the tech companies, they have developed a speed of new product development that is close to startups. The Microsoft, the AWSs, the Googles, the Apples pick up great ideas and roll it out at scale. Yep. That's a change.
All right, so welcome to another edition of I Need More Coffee and Better Ideas. Today, I've got with me Danny Line from Twipe. Welcome to the show, Danny.
Hi, Birger. Glad to be with you today.
Great. We've known each other for some years. We've seen each other at some conferences. I've had the good fortune of being at your Digital Growth Summit twice now, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm always impressed by what you and your team are doing. And then when we were looking at guests for the podcast, we definitely wanted to have you on and get your perspective on a few things. But before we get to the perspective of things, I always ask, how'd you end up where you are today? I'm sure, there's a story to that.
There is a story, and that story goes probably back to when I was probably 18 years old. I was studying maths and all of that, and I wanted to become a journalist. But I had a math teacher who was kind of guiding me into, let's say, engineering studies. But I've always had a very keen interest into what media and journalists, what kind of impact it has on our society in where we think. And so I worked for US companies. I started up a number of companies during that period, not a lot of interaction with media. But one of the companies that I founded was an active mobile SMS platform.
Okay.
And we already at that time...
When was this?
This is it started around 2000, and let's say around 2006-07, we started building small mobile websites. Like landing pages, websites, which I think today don't exist anymore. But on Nokia phones, they were the way to do a little bit of interactivity. Yeah. And we kind of saw the mobile world becoming mobile. And we organized seminars already at that time under the name Web Goes Mobile. And on one of those seminars, the people of the Standard came. Actually, the current CEO, Gert Isbaert, was there. And they kind of addressed after our seminar, say, hey, we have a problem and you may be able to help us. The problem that we have is that our website, the Standard, doesn't render on BlackBerry devices. And it happens to be that quite a number of important people had a BlackBerry device at that time. And can you not help us? And it was really our very, very first project. It was just a project. It was nothing. And it was kind of combining that interest in journalism. And we built that BlackBerry kind of enabled website. And then the iPhone came along and they asked, can you not build an iPhone app? You say, I haven't seen it, but let's do it. Let's try it. And we've been together with the Standard for many years in that early period, kind of their mobile innovation lab. And the Standard in Belgium, it's now part of Mediahuis, that many people know, was a long-time innovation leader in the Belgian market. And as we were growing, other publishers saw what we were doing, contacted us and say, hey, what you're doing for the Standard is of interest to us. And so we gradually saw the need for not kind of a project business, but a platform business. And that's basically the start of Twipe is around 2011. It's about 13 years ago now. And today we have more than 140 titles now on our platform with mobile apps, with web apps, digital editions, but also with personalization software in there, which we call James, with analytics. But it was really the very kind of interest of myself and curiosity into journalism, combining that with technology that kind of got me started. Really.
Yeah. It's interesting. Quite a few people who have been on this podcast started out as aspiring journalists, or at least in some way, shape, or form. Myself included, actually. I also went to school to try to be a journalist, but I wasn't a good enough writer, so that never came to fruition.
Same thing here. I don't think my writing skills are good enough.
I think we all find our path somehow. And for
Yeah,
us, you, Danny, it wasn't journalism, but we get to work with journalists, which I think is
absolutely.
really interesting. So I'm currently in Zurich for the One IFRA event. I was just at your event in Brussels,
Yeah,
October 8th, if I'm not mistaken.
sure.
And congratulations on another great event. It was
Thank you.
fantastic.
Thank you.
It was really, really good. And the content on stage was amazing. And quite a few takeaways from
Hmm.
that event as well.
Yeah.
If you were going to say, your top two, three
Hmm.
takeaways from that event,
Yeah,
and the keynotes,
sure.
what would you sort of
Mhm.
bring to the table here?
But maybe what is interesting about that event is also to highlight a bit the reasons why we created that event is that in the space of product and technology and let's say the news ecosystem, there are a number of conferences, but really focused on that, we felt the need to learn ourselves. And so we organized the first kind of reason we organized is for ourselves to kind of be inspired and be ahead of the game. We did that for the first time in a very small group. We invited a couple of customers who liked it, and it has gradually been extended to the event that you have attended. And thanks for being with us as well already twice. But for us, it's also a way for us to staying a bit ahead of the curve. And we do try to invite speakers of different calibers. Now, if you ask me key takeaways, of course, it is a bit probably very frequently already quoted, but I believe personally that we are in an accelerated disruption caused by this AI revolution.
Yeah.
And to me, the notion is accelerated. It's actually probably not that visible yet to the end consumer. Right, that we have learned from Nick Newman from the Reuters Institute. He showed that kind of at mass level, not yet. But if you look at it a bit more closer, from also some of the talks, also our keynote speaker was very clear on that. It's actually evolving at an enormous speed. Used to be only text generation, imagine 2 years ago.
Mhm.
Now we're talking audio generation, video generation, and we're going much more towards that kind of multimodal AI. So that is for this industry, of course, which is about content creation. It's a phenomenal challenge, and the industry has been challenged already quite a bit, from print to the internet, from the internet to the mobile,
For
and now
sure.
from the mobile to the AI. It doesn't stop.
There's no shortage of new things brought to the table for this
Not
industry. That's for
this,
sure.
I must say that. So that is for me key learning number one. It's actually only going faster. And if one of the keywords that I remember is speed, speed, speed. The other thing that I kind of took away, and Stig Arskov, who is the CEO of JP Politiken, the Danish large media group, highlighted that very nicely, is the fragmentation of audiences, which means that these organizations, they have to kind of, from the same newsroom, serve both in kind of the silver generation, the older audiences with specific needs, still very much close to print, and at the same time reinvent themselves on, let's say, social channels, short form video. How do you do that? How
Yep.
do you manage that? To me, it seems like an enormous, difficult exercise. But those audiences are quite different, fragmented, and still you want to kind of build business with them. So for me, that was the main lesson. And I think some speakers like Tom McCabe of The Economist, but also Karsten Groos of Medienhold Institute highlighted the need for marketing, for creating a brand, for highlighting and defending your brand against, let's say, the Spotifys of this world, the Netflixes of this world, the TikToks of this world. And investing in that more proactively seemed to be a kind of a constant insight that was shared by a number of speakers, like brand marketing.
Yep.
Very important.
Yep. I agree. And on the note of brand marketing, I just heard or I was part of a workshop yesterday here in Zurich, where user needs was one of the key components,
Sure.
and part of that again was the need to publish content that is aligned with the brand that you have, and not try to be something that you're not.
Sure.
And I think that's hugely important, because your audience typically comes to you for a reason, and they have some expectations that
Yes.
you have to fulfill. On the topic of expectations,
Yeah.
mobile is, it's not going down in popularity, let's say.
No. No.
Um, and I've seen my fair share of okay apps. I've seen my fair share of decent apps, and I've seen my fair share of great apps.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
what is it that makes a good mobile experience in your view?
I think first of all, it's all about expectation management again here, huh?
Mm,
And the bar of good experience, from our point of view, is put by the, let's say, some of the big tech players out there. What the Spotify's, the Instagrams, the TikToks do of these days is, let's say, what people experience as it should kind of have the same fluidity, user interactions, ease of use, because they define the standards. It's not the publishers who define the standards. Right? So that is the first thing. Is like, what is your benchmark? Those are probably your benchmarks that you would use as a user. Secondly, I think for a publisher these days, what is not that easy is in that, let's say, in a context of fragmented audiences, can you with one mobile app really cater for different needs? Like you have the TikTok generation that was short form video that doesn't have a long attention span. Can you capture that need with silver generation that says, I have 1 or 2 hours to spend with you, right? Give me a good print-like edition, a replica version that I can, at a large screen, that I can read.
mm,
Having that ability and combining that into one app experience for us is one of the big challenges and problems that we try to solve as a company at Ripe. And we do have some flagships. Luckily, we work together with companies like the Telegraph, where kind of last year, or no, this year, they were kind of awarded with the App of the Year award in the UK, News App of the Year, and that's all Tribe technology. So we're
yeah,
very proud of that.
yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
No, no, of course, and congrats on that. And
Thanks.
we also work with the Telegraph, and we feel fortunate to be working with such a solid organization as well. Um, there's one area that it seems, and I might be wrong, but
Yeah.
it seems undercovered in a way where newsletters can be capitalized on even more. But I'm not sure if I'm right. You're more into this than I am. Do you see
Yeah.
that newsletters are being leveraged to the best of publishers' capabilities, or is there still a big gap in terms of what newsletters can actually achieve for news outlets?
I think the opportunity and I'm just talking in the aggregate, right? On the average, I think most publishers today have their act together on newsletters. First of
Mm,
all,
mm,
you have, let's say, roughly speaking, two types of newsletters. You have the editorially generated, created newsletters on a specific deep topic,
yeah,
similar to a blog post or an article, and you have more, let's say, overviews, lists that can be either editorial created or automated, personalized. So we have ourselves also quite a bit of experience in the notion of personalizing newsletters with our James product and making sure that there's a plate of content adapted to interest and needs presented, and you can see ongoing good traction with that. What our customers observe, what the industry observes, is that the open rates are not really increasing. The engagement is not really largely increasing as a whole.
yeah,
And that might also probably be because many people receive so many newsletters, right, these
yeah,
days. That opportunity, so there's definitely that fine balance that publishers have to find between frequency, high quality content, and then what kind of audience can you tap into with newsletters, right? It's definitely not going to be the younger audiences, let's face it.
yeah,
It's definitely
yeah.
going to be the more email, let's say, adapted audience, which is also not the oldest ones, but there's a quite nice group of people engaged with newsletters and using that as their trigger for consuming their favorite news outlet.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in that generation where I appreciate newsletters,
Yeah,
but I can't.
I'm also.
Yeah, but I can't imagine the younger audiences being particularly interested in. But it's interesting what you say as well. I too receive way too many newsletters.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I'm going to say my open rate on the newsletters I receive, but certainly, many of them will never get opened.
Yeah, yeah. It's probably also from my point of view ridiculously low, right? The
Yeah,
open rate,
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah. That impacts, of course, any the effort you put into to doing something like that, and then it's going unnoticed, which is obviously a shame.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so I just heard is interesting. Reach. So your local news publisher in the UK,
Yes,
right?
UK. Yeah.
And we have KSTA Median in Germany,
Yes,
and probably several others as well, many others as well, who are now really deep diving into AI. And the KSTA Median case,
yes.
Thomas has been on
Yeah,
stage.
Thomas. Yeah, was on our event last year.
Exactly. Clara in the Nacht, or
Yes,
I'm
Clara.
probably.
Yeah.
Uh, and today I heard Reach have built an AI bot that they call Guten.
Okay.
And I forget the other name. There was two. Um, so taking all of this in, and we touched on it briefly earlier as well, but the future of media, if anything is certain, at least to my view, it's that it's really uncertain where we're going.
Yeah.
But we're a bunch of people who keep working in this industry, tackling challenges on a daily basis that are humongous, because
Mm.
the world is changing so fast.
Mm.
And some of the news organizations are so big that fast change is
Mm.
difficult,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I had Jody Hopperton at INMA on a few episodes
Yeah.
ago,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we discussed this. How
Mm.
startups or smaller companies are nimbler and bigger organizations are more or less like oil tankers.
Yeah.
Um, so a pretty large question here, but
Yeah.
the future of media, in your view, what do news outlets and magazines need
Mm.
to think about in order to be as best prepared as possible for what's coming? Because to your point, AI is accelerating, and there
Yeah.
will be more other things that come up in the future
Sure.
that we haven't really seen much of yet. And I'm always curious, what can publishers do to be as best prepared as possible?
Yeah. I think. In fact, what they can do is definitely try to learn from the past. And one of the key lessons from the past, if you look at it, when the internet passed by, and they kind of bluntly published all their precious content on the
Mm.
internet, hoping to build an advertising business because that was their main business model, and they kind of lost that game quite rapidly to Google and Facebook. So the first thing is to learn from the past and try to understand what is your unique asset, what is your unique value proposition, and in that high quality self-generated, not synthetic content, still is to me the unique assets. That's the first and very important insight from the past. I think many publishers are being confronted today. Should we make a deal with OpenAI? Yes or no? A
Mm.
content licensing deal. Many publishers are reluctant, and I do understand. Some are not reluctant and are just go with the flow, take the money, and learn. But being reluctant and trying to understand how can you leverage that unique asset in the future, for me, that's one of the key learnings of the past. Now, another key learning for me, if you talk about oil tankers, like I've been starting up companies since the year 2000, first wave of the internet, and launching. And what you now see, for me, what is quite different is that the big incumbents, and I'm not talking publishers, but tech companies, that they have developed a speed of new product development that is close to startups.
Mm.
And that is very different from the environment, let's say late 99, 2000, so 25 years ago, where the incumbents, the big telcos, were indeed oil tankers. They were slow, and new startups like Google and so on, they could launch themselves and flourish. Today, if you look at how quickly the Microsoft, the AWSs, the Googles, the Apples pick up great ideas and roll it out at scale, or they buy the teams, not the companies,
Yep.
that's a change. So that also means, as a publisher, you also have to look at, okay, where are they going? What is their roadmap? And how can we try to forecast where they will be in 3-4 years time, and what do we do best to prepare for that.
Yeah.
And so that sort of developing that insight and that foresight is a very important, I think, skill that publishers will have to develop. We can help them as tech companies, in my opinion. We should help them. We have a better understanding of tech capabilities, and there's definitely an opportunity there. But that to me is really is going to be key. Trying to skate where the puck will be, and then the question is, where will that puck be? A big part will be defined, in my opinion, by the tech giants, whether you want it or not.
Yeah, I think that sums it up really well. We talked about it here at the conference today during one of the mini breaks. Are the crawlers of the big tech companies good for the user experience or not? And it was quite an interesting debate about it.
Sure.
And there are two sides to that coin, of course. Especially if you're a publisher. To your point, is some publishers are reluctant to give away their content. Some are striking deals. Axel Springer is probably the biggest one to so far do that. It's a really interesting space, and I'm curious to see what's going to happen over the next few years. So we're getting close to time here, Danny.
Okay.
Time flies when you're having fun. I always end these conversations since the name of the podcast is "I Need More Coffee and Better Ideas." We hope to not exclude anyone, and our last guest was not a coffee drinker; he was a tea drinker. But the question goes to you, Danny. How many cups of coffee do you have per day?
Yeah, I think anywhere between 3 and 5. That is my number of cups of coffee. But I'm quite sensitive to caffeine, so I really have to stop at already at noon, which is a good kind of breaker. But a good cup of coffee.
I wish I had that discipline. I need to get better at that. I typically go a bit further than noon.
How many cups do you have per day?
It varies. Like when I'm at a conference like I am today, maybe 1, 2 max.
Okay.
Because I get all the energy I need from talking to people, being a very highly extrovert person. However, if I'm sitting in the office and I'm just working, then I could probably hit 7.
7.
In one.
Wow. Okay.
Which is not great.
And how many ideas does it generate? That's the question.
That is a very good question. And I will say, at least it helps me think clear when I'm not necessarily as fast as I want to be, and I can have a cup of coffee, and I know that within 30-45 minutes or so, I'll pick up my activity a little bit.
It does help, absolutely.
It does help. All right, Danny, thank you so much for being on.
Yes, hello. And it was a pleasure. Thanks for inviting. It was a pleasure talking and exchanging with you during this podcast, but also on whatever event that we bump into each other. Always a pleasure.
Yes. Always likewise, Danny. Very much a pleasure.